The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Great to have you in. Welcome to Hail Varsity, a Wednesday edition. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and you. Always check out YouTube, Hail Varsity YouTube, to stream the show and find us, Hail Varsity Radio Network. Also, pop on in if you want on Twitter at HVarsity Radio, 489-1240, the numbers to get in. Big one tonight at Pinnacle Bank Arena. Nebraska basketball back to start a new streak as USC comes to town. Kind of a Jekyll and Hyde SC team that capable of beating the Big Ten's best. They did earlier this season on the road at Illinois. What's in store tonight? We'll dive into it. We'll hear from Fred Hoiberg. Mike Babcock going to be with us from Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports in about 15 minutes. Check in with Babbers. We'll talk with Evan Bland, Husker Baseball around the corner, and see what Evan's been up to. And then Jake Muhleisen will be part of the show tonight. Of course, him and Kent will pop on for their pregame an hour before tip-off. We'll check in with Mule coming up here around 5:25. And then a Jock Doc to wind it down with Dr. Brandon Seifert with Nebraska Orthopedic. Hope you're doing all right. So we always check in on Wednesdays. We check in on Elijah's bowling league. How the lanes treated Elijah, how many beers were necessary, and we'll get into some thoughts here on quarterback play in 2025 for Nebraska football, too. That's part of some thoughts early on. Was it a team win? Was it, did the refs get you?
Refs and bowling?
I know, I'm joking. Right? I mean, that's been the buzz a lot this week with the NFL playoffs. The jokes plenty on social media that Buffalo's already been flagged 5 times for taunting and excessive hits on Mahomes. Chief fans don't want to hear it, but I just got to make sure the lanes were even last night.
No, we believe our team in controlling the controllables. And last night, we controlled the controllables. It was a 0-beer night for me. I was not at my best, but I am better than I was in the first half of the season.
Do you need more alcohol? And I'm not just saying you, I'm asking out loud. Do you need more alcohol for golf or for bowling?
It's about finding that happy sweet spot for both.
Where you just, you're not...
I'll say golf.
You're not caring to the level of you're out there just having a good time. You're letting it rip.
Well, you're not thinking.
Or slice.
You're not thinking.
Right, that's what I mean.
You're falling back upon your training.
Yeah. The training is to twist the top and do the 6-ounce or 12-ounce curl.
I will say golf.
You're falling back on your training.
Just the time spent golfing.
Tailgate training.
Means you got to have more to maintain that same level.
That's 3 brats and a 6er.
Well, yeah, it's like a 6er of beers is probably equivalent to 2-3 beer at the bowling alley, you know? Like, because hour and a half, 3 games of bowling, it's about what it takes us. Maybe 2 hours on a long night. Hour and a half, generally speaking. Whereas, go play a full 18, you're talking 4 hours, you know? You got to maintain that. If you want to maintain, that's going to be a bit more just work that you got to put in with those beers, you know?
It's real. And I mean, it's spectacular. And it's, depending on where you go, it could be a 3.5 hour 18. It could be a 5.5 hour 18.
Yeah.
That sweet spot's about 4 hours and 25 minutes. And you're only lost a couple, 3 golf balls, and you're a happy dude.
But it should be noted, though, last night, so 0 beers for me. I did well for myself. I have found my sweet spot is about a beer a game whenever you're bowling, but if you're drinking IPAs, that third game is going to get rough. Gotcha. So it's about finding that right pace. My brother...
Do you get frowned upon for diving into the IPA game during bowling?
No.
Okay, I just thought I'd ask.
No.
I'm trying to get a lay of the land.
Anything flies.
Okay.
Anything flies. We got the IPA drinkers there. We got the Busch Light drinkers there. We got the rum and Coke drinkers there, the Crown and Diet drinkers there. We welcome all.
Rum and Diet, I mean, Diet and Morgan and Diet. I mean, it's a thing, especially when you get to my age. That's all most of the fellas drink.
Hey, and they
love it.
There's a fair number in our league, and they're always between game 2 and game 3 heading outside for that cigarette break.
Gotta have the heater.
Hey, and you know what? We welcome all. So it should be noted. But my brother, so I was 0 beers. My brother, we're like 2 minutes before we start going. We're deep into the warm up period. And I'm like, where is Ben at here? Like,
hold on. There's a warm up period.
Of course.
Okay. It's like going to the tee box.
Yeah, like you
driving range.
You don't want to get hurt. I know I'm not going to get hurt, but there's some older folks in the league, and you got to stretch out. It's important. Anyway, so we got like 2 minutes left in the warm up period, about to get going. I'm like, okay, Ben's been known to run late, but this is a little bit exceptional for him. And he comes walking out of the bar 2 minutes before the game, beer in hand. I'm like, where have you been? He's like, I've been here. Like, I'm not sure that's a good thing.
I've been priming.
He proceeded to have his best night of the season.
Okay,
so hats
that's
off
good.
to him.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, we gotta.
Yeah, we just spent 6 minutes talking about my bowl.
That's fine. I'm just talking about the beer intake or the drink intake. Golf v. bowling.
I don't think we can say we can bring up on stream what Crew says.
Crew checks in.
I don't think we can say that.
Okay. Crew has an alternative choice.
Beer.
He is not going with edible nor beer, nor Morgan. It's more of the Lawrence Taylor alleged
pre-practice.
Wow. Okay, you mentioned sweet spot. What is the sweet spot for Nebraska basketball? Let's apply the sweet spot for knocking them pins down to PBA, right? Nebraska needs to get back on track. And SC's dangerous, right? SC's dangerous. They're long. They're athletic. If they get out and feel good about what they're doing, it could be a long night because they're talented enough on a given night to beat about anybody. It's just, do they do the little things? Do they stick with it? Are they going to rebound? Are they going to play team ball? Are they going to go hero ball? Are you going to get into foul trouble? Is it, what's going on with USC? And right now and Musselman's a hell of a coach and recruiter, but there's still a pretty heavy NBA flavor to it, right? As far as just how the flow of the games go. And then you want up-tempo and you want dunks, you want threes, you want to be in an exciting offense that's going to work, but are you going to play defense? Are you going to box out? Are you going to switch? Are you going to communicate? Are you going to do those things? And all the little things that has been part of Nebraska's success for most of their time at PBA the last 2 years has been the give and take of the crowd and the team. The team giving the crowd reason to freak out in a good way. And once those roars happen, that extra juice, that sixth man, so to speak, can propel you on. And you feel it as a team. Coach Musselman touched on it in his pre-game presser, getting ready for Nebraska. But, it's pretty simple with Nebraska. You need 3 consistent scorers. You need to be committed to defense. And Elijah, toughness travels. And it traveled to Maryland. It needed to travel from Maryland back to PBA because the last time you tipped off a week ago against Rutgers, you got out-scrapped.
Mm-hmm. And my concern tonight is with that scrappiness, that want to, it's like, the students are back. Can you lock in and get back to what made you great to start this season? Where is the defense gone? Like, can you figure that out? It hasn't fully been effort. There's been some momentarily times of effort.
It's just been lapses.
Yeah, teams seemingly have the book a little bit on Nebraska's defense. And whenever Nebraska's not locked in for a full 40 minutes, teams take advantage. And I think that's going to be the biggest key tonight is can they get back to what made them good for the first 20 games of the season? And you look at USC, it's a very simple formula with USC. 100% of the time, whenever they put up less than 75 points in a game this year, they lose. 100% of the time, when they put up more than 75 points in a game this year, they win. It's very, very simple. That's the magic number. Hold USC below 75 points. You should win. If you let them get their offense in rhythm and they put up 75 or more points, as I said, they haven't lost a game this year. 100% of the time. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not pulling anything out here.
You've got the magic number.
Stretching it. 75. If they put up 75 points or more in a basketball game, they win. That's Nebraska's task tonight. Hold USC below 75. If you can't put up 70 points and you lose whenever USC is held to 68 or whatever, okay, that's not how USC wins basketball games, though. They put up 75 points, they win.
Well, and listen, you want to keep them below that magic number of 75. Nebraska's got to live in that 60s to 70s neighborhood. That's how you're going to win ball games. You keep teams below 70. The last 4 games, you've given up 58 made threes. That's 14 and a half a contest. From beyond the arc, teams are shooting right at 47%. And even Maryland, they went 10 of 25, but that's 5-6% percentage points better than they normally shoot, and they hit 10 threes on you. So they went for a season high. So it really comes down to intensity. It comes down to effort. You got to be crisp on your rotations and know where you're supposed to be. Also the turnovers, right? Think about the 2 things in 3 of these one-score games. I'm not talking football, but turnovers are I guess a thing that also travels, right, beyond whatever field of competition you're on. But you're missing free throws and you're turning the ball over. It's one missed possession and it's empty trips.
Well, can we compare free throws to special teams? If we're going to make the football comparison,
that's fine.
That's what it is to me.
Okay.
It should be buttoned up. Turnovers are turnovers. Special teams are things you don't think about, but whenever it's not working, you notice it right away. And that's how I think you feel about free throws. I mean, that's my comparison.
That's fair. And from the aggressiveness standpoint, you came out and responded and took control of Iowa, but you didn't finish them off. You came out and had a really good start, especially from 3 against Rutgers. And you went up 9, and you could have grew that to double digits. If you do that, who knows if they hang around. Keep pouring it on people if you're in rhythm. I know there's going to be ebbs and flows of a game, but quite honestly, don't take your foot off the gas, because Nebraska could have buried Iowa. They let them hang around and then didn't play defense, and then you had a chance to get up early and then stay on Rutgers, and you didn't do it. We'll get our shout-outs going. We'll talk a little football as well. And something we all saw in the national championship game I want to get into. We'll talk to Babbers about it as he is in the green room, is quarterback mobility. You saw it with Ohio State. You saw it with Notre Dame. How much of it do you need to see? Can you see? Will you see with Nebraska football? Because you saw a little sprinkling of it from time to time last year. NASCAR Eric is in. Good to have you, Eric. Thank you much. QB1 Ace checking in from North Arkansas, says must win tonight. Duck is here. Duck, good to have you. Arlo checks in. Brian Snitley, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty, is setting the over-under on made threes by USC tonight, 13.5.
Oh, that's a lot.
Dude, if Nebraska's going to win, it's got to be like way under. I mean, SC can maybe go for 7 or 8, but it's got to be 8 out of 30, something like that. I mean, that's how you're gonna win if you're Nebraska.
The percentage is more important than the total made. I agree.
Right. That's fair. You can launch 58 threes. You hit 10 of them, right? So Brian Snitley's in. Mr. Erickson's here. Jeff Snitley, again, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty. Mike in from Cali says the spring game is 2 to 3 months away. That's right, Mike in Cali, we hope. Grateful Red coming up and saying what's up from Colorado. Other Dave is here. Says we need a win. Uncle Larry is here. 3-Putt is here. Justin is here. Crew checking in, and Crew's already given his prescription for pregame treats. NASCAR Eric says 6 beers will get you through 9 holes. 3-Putt is asking, are you bouncing the bowling ball like Mrs. Schmidt?
No.
It's not halfway down the lane and then it hits and runs.
I'm not smooth as butter like some people in there, but I'm somewhat smooth.
We should post her footage when I talk about her approach and then the flat out shot put.
Well, better yet, let's just have a Hail Varsity Radio bowling outing.
Yeah. The bunny would probably charge an appearance fee.
Okay. Uh-huh. I thought she liked me. Maybe not.
No. I'm saying we invite all from all corners of the globe. We have a Hail Varsity bowling party.
I'll even let. I mean, I bring him every time. I'll even let the people touch my balls. Sorry, I had to go sophomore.
That was
for a second.
horrible.
That was not even
Tim is here. Tim, Game Dog, good to have you. Nebraska just moved to -7. Game Dog says 77% of the money ATS on Nebraska. There you have it. Anonymous checks in. I was going to read what Anonymous said, but it got scrolling past me. Again, Hail Varsity YouTube. You want to watch the show. Every time Nebraska makes a run to get a lead, the other team takes a timeout. Nebraska's run ends. That's great at using your timeouts and breaking momentum. They never have a counter coming out of break. Well, you got to make the adjustment right and stay on what's working. Mike Babcock will check in some football and hoops on the way with Hail Varsity. Good to have you on a Wednesday.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it, it's Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Jay is checking in, shouting out Elijah. Mike Babcock is here. Mr. Husker Football and a little Husker Hoops. Hurrdat Sports, Hail Varsity at MD Babs on Twitter. Babbers, how we doing, man? Good to see you.
I'm doing just fine, thanks. Good to see you guys.
Thank you for coming on in. And I want to start off with just some thoughts on Coach McBride. As we talked to Uncle Charlie on Monday, he's in town in Omaha for the Outland Award ceremony tonight, and the honored guest there, along with the Outland winner. But Coach is getting the Tom Osborne Legacy Award. It's been the 14th annual of that, and just what we are blessed to have Coach on, and about 10 years or 10 plus years with Coach coming on every Monday with us. But we got to cover Coach for his career, and what did Mr. Blackshirt mean to Nebraska football? I want to get your take on that.
What did he mean? He meant an awful lot. I mean, he was the definition of black shirt coach. I think it was tough love with him. The thing that always that sticks in my mind always is that back in the day, obviously we didn't have to have interviews, set up at the podium, whatever. You could just talk to people after practice or whatever. And Charlie would typically do this. You would go up to Charlie and say, "Hey, Coach, could I get a minute with you?" And no, I'm busy. And he'd start walking to the locker room, and you'd keep walking with him, and then he'd stop and he'd say, "Okay, what do you want to know?" And if you didn't stay walking with him, you didn't get in, because he said that initial thing. He said, "No, I don't have time." But then he always did have time if you stayed with it, and he'd talk for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it was you needed. And I always appreciated that about him. But you had to learn that. I mean, if you were new on the beat and you asked him if you could talk to him, he'd say no, and he'd take off. And if you didn't stay with him, you wouldn't get the interview.
And I'm sure it wasn't a, "Hey, I'm just no thanks." I'm sure it was the customary gruff love, right? The gruff love of yeah. Charlie. I can hear the tone. I can hear the tone when he answers the phone. "Hello." I mean, it's great.
Yeah. He was pretty demanding of his players, but I think there was a purpose behind that. And I think that the guys that understood that were the guys that had success, because he was a great coach. Even though when he played in Colorado, they did beat Nebraska, so that was not not a good thing. But yeah, here's the other thing about him. He stuck around when Frank took over as head coach. He was really ready to step aside when Coach Osborne stepped aside. And Coach Osborne talked to him a little bit and asked if he would stick around at least a season or two to help Frank in the transition. And Charlie agreed to it. That was the kind of guy that he was. At least that was my understanding. And I really respected him as a coach. And again, he was, if you stayed with it, he was such a good guy to talk to you after practice that I always appreciated that. But it was always first, no, I don't have time, and then stay with it, and you got him.
What can you say about the value of that bad cop nature on a football staff? We talked about it a little bit with Dana Holgorsen being brought up for Nebraska's offense here this offseason, bringing a bit of a bad cop to Matt Rule's good cop. Kind of feels the same with Charlie McBride and Coach Osborne. What can you say about that bad cop nature? That might not be the correct term.
Personality.
The personality. But what value is that within a football staff in your eyes?
I think it was really important, especially for the defense. What he worked with, the black shirts, the approach that they had, the intensity that they played with, the demands that they had, and I can't say enough about how respectful those black shirts were to that kind of approach. They understood that that's the way it should be. And I remember, I think it was like a preseason practice or something out in the stadium, and I think it was Jason Peter was involved in, and he was looking down at another group of defensive guys, and somebody wasn't really working very hard, in his opinion, and he raced the complete length of the field and grabbed that guy and, said, hey, you've got to have this kind of intensity even when you're practicing. That's the sort of thing that Charlie brought to that room. The expectations were always given 100%, and there was a lot of grit in that defense, and it certainly defined the black shirts, I think.
Mike Babcock's with us, Hail Varsity Radio at MD Babs on Twitter. Babbers, big one tonight. We've all kind of circled and highlighted, and the term must win is thrown out a lot. It's been thrown out for a handful of ball games for football. Baseball is a little different with, must win series, right? 2 out of 3. With Nebraska basketball, looking at the schedule, the first 10 versus the back 10 in league play. It's been rough. It's been a loaded deck, so to speak, but you're an old team coming into this, and you've got a little sideways chance to get better tonight, but I don't know that the lineup of SC's engaged that it's going to be real easy. They have a chance they can beat about anybody on a given night if they themselves lock in. That's been their problem. How are you feeling about tonight's tip-off at 8?
Well, the fact that it's at home, I think that's a positive. I feel like the crowd is going to make a difference. Just the intensity, the crowd is going to encourage the Huskers, I think, to get the kind of intensity that they need to have. I just haven't seen that in the losses. It seems like the intensity is not quite there. And, for example, it's a positive that they got 34 points off the bench in the last game. But that's also, look at it from the other side. What are your starters doing? if your bench is coming in and scoring more than half your points, or right about half your points, what are the starters doing? And I understand, that maybe there's foul issues or, you make changes or whatever. But that's one of the things that I looked at and I thought, wow, 34 points off the bench, that's pretty good. But then how about the starters? And, I think that Bryce Williams needs to ramp up the intensity because he's such a talented guy. And I don't always see that, I don't see the intensity there that I think that if it's there, he's a really outstanding player, certainly offensively, averaging almost 19 points a game. But we haven't necessarily seen it in every game because he's got some 30-point games to balance that out. And, the other thing that you mentioned earlier, defensively, I think that Nebraska has to be aware of, the offside guy. It seems like they go to double team somebody, and then there's somebody left open on the backside, and he gets an open 3-point shot, and that's where the things are coming from. I think defensively you have to be aware of that because Nebraska plays good defense, typically. And, I think that that's what you're going to have tonight is a good defensive effort. And as Elijah said, hold them under 75 points and you got a shot to win. But I think that defensively Nebraska can do the job. But you got to hit free throws and you got to offensively, the guys that are on the court to begin the game have to step up and show what they can do because they can.
Mike, if we go big picture with this game, kind of feels to me like you win it, you still have a chance at NCAA tournament type, finish to the season. If you don't win it, it really feels like it becomes an uphill climb and you're going to have to win some games that people aren't expecting you to win. Even people around here aren't expecting you to win. So just want to get your thoughts. If it isn't the NCAA tournament for this team this year, is that a disappointment in your eyes?
I think, to me, I think it is. I mean, I think that this team, the way you saw it start, and now obviously there's some good teams in there, but four losses in a row, and boy, you want to stay away from a fifth loss, particularly at home. I think this is a team that should be an NCAA qualifier. I think it has the ability to be the first Husker team to win an NCAA tournament game. It's there, but man, I'm starting to wonder when I see what's happened the last couple of weeks in the last 4 games. And again, you've played some good teams, so I'll put that there. But man, the Iowa game should have had that. Should have had Maryland, I think. Mm-hmm. Could have had at least a couple more wins, and maybe even maybe a third one in there, because I think this team can do it if they just put the pieces together and do what they are capable of doing.
Wanted to ask you real quick, Babbers, about 60 seconds here. Do you see more quarterback run? Maybe not called, but more scramble. And I asked that because of what we saw in the national title game. Is that something Nebraska needs to look at?
I don't know if that's really the offensive plan. That they would do it intentionally. I think Raiola is capable of moving around in a situation when he has to. But I think that you've got to rely on, again, the running game with the other guys to get things set up so that he can be in a position to pass, because I think that's obviously what he does well, the best.
For sure. Can you sprinkle it in, and how much of it do you get here? We'll dive into that here in a little bit. Babbers, appreciate you much. We'll see what happens tonight at PBA, man.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you. There he is, Mr. Husker Football, Mike Babcock at MD Babs on Twitter. It's where you follow him. Open phones here till 5 with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. It's Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Hail Varsity YouTube, where you can watch the show. Hail Varsity Radio. Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Elijah Herbel at Herbal Essence. Chris Schmidt at Schmidt_radio, where you can find us. On Twitter, you can email Chris at hailvarsity.com. So, on the topic of quarterback run, Listen, I think it's something that every offense wants to have. Not every offense is comfortable with it. But, man, you see it at all levels where it can stress a defense. And you saw in the national title game where defenses would go, man, there'd be pressure, and let's tuck and run. And how good was Will Howard with just kind of taking the ball down? And granted, from a size standpoint, he goes about 230, so he can take a pop and make some big-time plays. And, I think of Lamar, I think of Mike Vick, I think of some guys in the NFL that were just Randall Cunningham. I'm going to date myself, but those guys were just magic. And those weren't always designed quarterback runs. For Lamar, yes. But for the most part, you absolutely wear out a defense. You stress them. You got a mush rush. And you saw Dylan Raiola last year really against Ohio State, a little bit against Indiana. You saw some grittiness in the bowl game. And that is something that needs to be encouraged. I think it will be moving forward, but just be super selective at it. And I even think back to Casey Thompson. Dude scored 6 touchdowns as a pocket guy because guess what? He when he did run, it was in the red zone. And the red zone quarterback element is so key. Can you stay healthy? Josh Allen's perfect. Right, he has been so good with Buffalo. Mahomes has killed defenses every postseason and selectively through the regular season with the timely 3rd and 8 scramble for 9. And you don't got to be Eric Crouch, tough or fast to be a running quarterback, but just be a willing quarterback that's mobile enough and got a little bit of agility.
There it is. It's whenever you think of your favorite mobile quarterbacks in college or pro over the last 10 years, almost all of them, I won't say all of them, but almost all of them are pass first.
Yeah, well, you need to be pass first that's mobile.
Yes, there it is. And that's always the argument that I think I see people making is, man, Nebraska needs a running quarterback. Look at all these guys around the country that run the ball. Nebraska needs a quarterback that throws the ball really well.
Yes.
That also has some mobility.
First, second, and third on the list.
I mean, Notre Dame doesn't beat Penn State if not for Riley Leonard's arm. I know Riley Leonard, very mobile quarterback. The arm still comes first. That's what allowed them to go win that football game.
Still made throws as they were down by a boatload to Ohio State. That's what got them back in the game.
Was Will Howard mobile? Did he go pick up 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 plenty of times this year? Absolutely. What won them that game was him being dang near perfect in the first half through the air. Mm-hmm. That's what it is right now. Is you can't have a quarterback that is a running quarterback that cannot throw the football. Nebraska's already gotten the throwing element checked off the box with Dylan Raiola. I'm confident in saying that man can throw the heck out of the football. The question becomes how willing of a runner is he, and how willing of a runner do you want him to be? Because let's not forget, we just made it through the first season since Tanner Lee, where Nebraska had a quarterback start every single game because there was no injuries.
Take a drink. If you've got Tanner Lee on the old bingo card for Hail Varsity Radio today,
I don't think Raiola will ever be the guy that is, you know what, we're just going to go quarterback power 3rd and 1 here and power forward.
No, and that's not what you're asking.
You're asking for the 3 to 5 times a game. You look, there's guys covered, they're in man coverage. You're going to find a lane, tuck it and run, pick up 8, slide down, and move on to the next play.
Right. And what you can't live on, unless you're just uber talented, you can't 9 times out of 10 have an athlete / running back playing quarterback where great off of play action, it's one-on-one coverage, or there is no coverage because the play action worked and it's a wide open throw. You need a guy that can throw the out route on 3rd and 7. Right, to stay in the pocket, have a pocket presence, step up in the pocket and be able to process and deliver dimes. But have the ability and willingness to run and just stay healthy. That's the concern. Know where to slide, too. And I know that's going to be a film session possibly here for the upcoming season.
Well, the stats would tell you the future of quarterback sliding may actually not be sliding. It might be diving.
Yes,
They
right?
It's
like
diving head first is actually safe.
Do the Ricky Henderson tribute. Absolutely. Do it that way.
Because it puts you into a less vulnerable position, and B, it also takes any knee and ankle out of the question whenever it's your the front half of your body coming down first. So.
Well, and
or a hip.
Babbers nailed it too with what's your running back situation like? Because look at Philly this weekend, right? What's Hurts' health like? And the guy is a quite capable thrower. He's not a bad throwing quarterback, but what makes him good is the improv and that run element. And they've got Saquon to hand off to, so that's a hell of a 1-2 punch. Same with Lamar, with their running situation and him just being able to pull it on the zone read. It's incredible, and he's really become a good thrower. Able to kind of lace it, and he's had some weapons. So, I think you'll see that encouraged from Dana and Nebraska's offense, and you'll hopefully see it from Dylan when needed, when necessary. Think about the Illinois game, right? How many times did you get wore out? And it wasn't awful, but it was 2 or 3 times that game where the quarterback just scrambled a little bit and kept the play alive, not only to find an open receiver, but just scrambled enough to get a first down. And that's a wear out, man. That's an absolute wear out. What do you do defensively? I mean, do you devote a spy? You can't. That'd be idiotic. But playing 11 on 11, I mean, that's better numbers for the offense than the defensive typical advantage where a quarterback isn't doing anything.
What I just significantly doubt we'll see is with some of these guys you've laid out, Howard, Riley Leonard, Hurts, Lamar.
Right. Those guys are true dual threat.
Yes. True dual threat. I don't think we're going to see the designed quarterback run where you put the ball into 15.
There's no quarterback. There's no Jamal Lord quarterback counter on 3rd and 4.
No, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Dylan Raiola pull it on a zone play, where you get the read. Wouldn't be opposed to see pull it or taking it on the edge a couple times this season, but yeah, you're not going to go just put it in Dylan Raiola's hands and say put your head down and get us 2.
No, it's not a between the tackles thing. You let him keep and just do it a couple of times to screw with the defense, so they got to be thinking about it.
Or just enough where it's on film where your defensive end has to say, you know what, you got to be ready.
Right, you just can't crash, right? Mm-hmm. So we'll see if that's more of something to look at if you're Nebraska football and how much more of it's added to, right? Raiola's repertoire, all that he brings to the party. You've got an advantage with a guy that made it through as a freshman, absolutely learned a lot, made a lot of plays, room to grow. Now you got a receiver room, some running backs to go off of, and a full year under your belt as a freshman that got to soak in and make some plays. We'll wind down this first hour. It's Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Skylar chiming in. Did we talk about Rule's roast of Feinbaum already? We touched on that. We spent time on it yesterday. We played the audio of Feinbaum and Greenberg yesterday with old Powell. Crowning the Big Ten. And then, we retweeted Rule's tweet. But, hey, good on Matt Rule, the video. And don't kid yourself. You'll get Matt Rule on the Feinbaum show at some point. I'd like to believe either this spring or this summer. I mean, he'll do McAfee. He'll do maybe he'll do Eisen. I don't know. I mean, he'll do the big hits, and he still makes time for the local guys, which is awesome.
Well, the question is, does Feinbaum have thick enough skin to allow?
If he sits down, I mean, listen, if he's willing to have Lane Kiffin just stab away.
Really, I'm not sure what you're good at, Lane Kiffin.
Right.
That was an uncomfortable conversation, though, watching that.
It was fun.
It was fun.
And our old buddy Lars is close with Feinbaum, and I think fastly becoming one of Feinbaum's favorite guests is our dear friend Garth Glissman, especially with how Well, the SEC basketball is performing in reference to the SEC football slate. What a AP top 25 finish for the Big Ten.
Yeah, well, what if Feinbaum just becomes a SEC basketball show instead of football until the football side of things gets it figured out?
Till they get it together, right?
So I did see a comment last night that made me laugh. I was like, man, Feinbaum talking about the Big Ten yesterday really sounded like he was in a hostage situation, held at gunpoint, being forced to say that. It was awkward sounding.
Think twice, Paul, if you're okay. Please do it. No, I mean, you gotta own up. And the Big Ten was wonderful. You can't hang your hat on Bama crushing Wisconsin this year. So Big Ten's for real. And Matt Rule knows what he's talking about. It's not just hyperbole or conference pride or pump up. It's, no, dude, this league's tough. It's brutal. It's murder. It is the NFL to survive week in, week out.
Yeah, especially whenever you're playing 9 and everyone else is playing 8.
In the 9 you're playing, depending on how the old schedule cards are dealt, not good.
We can't talk about the SEC being on par with the Big Ten until they start playing 9 conference games.
Look at you.
I've been saying this for a while.
No, I know.
It's a joke that they just get one less conference game.
You don't like the fact they're playing. I'll say this: like you'll have your LSU's, you'll have your Alabamas, Auburn from time to time, A&M, Texas now. So I've listed a few SEC teams that do play a non-conference. I mean, you're going to have Ohio State, Texas to start the year next year. You had Texas go to Michigan this year.
Well, just
and I'm not trying to defend Bevo, forgive me, but I'm just saying there's not as many teams as need to be that say, all right, let's dance early in the season.
It's still crazy. Someone's got to step in, though. It'd be like if the the NFC was playing 4 preseason games and 16 regular season games, and the AFC was playing 17 regular season games and only 3 preseason games. And you get to the end of the season, you go, well, to make it all even, we're just going to make 1 preseason game for the NFC.
And nobody's going.
Season game.
Nobody from one side's going to Germany or Mexico or England. Reminder to get your Supernovas tickets. And, man, the Novas, Nova Nation, UPAC, CHI, the 2 biggest crowns in U.S. pro volleyball season history. Keep it coming. The Supernovas take on the Columbus Fury coming up Friday, January 31st. Get your tickets now, supernovas.com.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Hour 2 is here at Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Hail Varsity YouTube, where to watch Hail Varsity Radio, Twitter, different social media platforms as well, Facebook and Twitter, and all of our friends along the Hail Varsity Radio Network. Evan Bland with us from the Omaha World Herald at Evan Bland, OWH, on Twitter is where you find him. Evan, how we doing? What's a good word, man?
Hey, yeah, doing well. Loving this 30-degree weather and the fact that we have, less snow here than a lot of places in the South.
That's hilarious. Let's go to Destin and try and find Coach O. Go Tigers. And right now he's scraping his windshield, dude.
Well, I have enjoyed all the people down south that are turning random things into sleds because they've never had to buy a sled for sledding before. You see the guy that was in a suitcase?
Yeah.
He got a suitcase and was going down.
I got a kick out of somebody being sober enough on Bourbon Street to ice skate. I mean,
wow.
I'm serious. Like someone was ice skating, they got the skates out, and they're just kind of zipping along Bourbon Street.
I'm not sure what's more improbable, ice on Bourbon Street or someone being sober enough on Bourbon Street to ice skate.
You can keep your balance, right? So we ended the last hour talking a little bit about Matt Rule, his tweet, and the old Paul Feinbaum salute. And Evan, what'd you think, man? What'd you think of the Big Ten this year? We're going to get into a little quarterback run discussion and Husker baseball with you, but overall, what's your takeaway with this Big Ten world Nebraska was a part of with the AP final rankings coming out this week, and of course Ohio State claiming the prize.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, Matt Rule was right, and he kept receipts from folks like Feinbaum who didn't want to hear it at the time. But yeah, it turned out he was right. Yeah, Big Ten should get 4 in. They got 4 in. They won the national championship yet again, and I do think it's just kind of the new reality that we're in, where the Big Ten has the most money. They have programs that care about football just as much as the SEC. I think the thing that people maybe have misunderstood for a while about the Big Ten is that maybe they haven't in the last 20 years been as top heavy as the SEC with the Alabamas and the Georgias. But I think in terms of depth, I mean, they're right there, and they've been there for a long time, and now they're at the top of the heap in terms of television revenue. They're competitive in NIL and all the rest. It's a gauntlet. It's a league that's going to give you the benefit of the doubt. And now it kind of looks like a league that maybe is going to have the usual suspects in your Michigans and Ohio States and Penn States, but one that's deep enough and resourced enough that you're probably going to have a surprise team like in Indiana, and maybe it's somebody else next year. I think you could make an argument for probably half a dozen schools that could take that next step because of just where they stack up nationally in terms of resources. So it was a good year for the league. I think the 12-team playoff is one where they're going to be pretty consistently well represented, and we got off to a good start, especially relative to the SEC, which is, of course, the league that they're going to be compared to until some of these things in college athletics maybe change.
Well, Evan, why stop at 4 teams from the Big Ten in the college football playoff? We saw how this year went. Why not go 5?
Well, yeah. I mean, who was your snub? Illinois, maybe. I don't know that anyone was stumping for them to make it, but I mean, who knows? If you have a strong enough non-conference schedule and things line up well, like I think we've seen, if you lose 2 games, you are still in a pretty good position to make it, and if you lose 2 games in the Big Ten, all the more so. So, who knows how that'll shake out. And conference realignment continues to take away from some of the other leagues, and so maybe they do become. Maybe the Big 12 is a 1-bid league consistently. Maybe who knows how that looks moving forward. But kind of like the College World Series last year was all SEC and ACC. I do think we're moving toward a world where maybe the parity is a little greater in terms of the teams at the top, but it's consolidated within those conferences that are going to be best financially set.
Evan, we were talking quarterback run, and in lieu of the championship game, you saw Leonard make plays with his legs all season long, and for sure in the playoffs, but was a good enough thrower to really help kind of spur that comeback to make it a non-blowout. And, of course, what Will Howard was able to do with some grittiness. And I want to apply that to Nebraska's offense, Dylan Raiola. And you saw it at times this year, the willingness to run, the ability to do so. And is that something that you think you'll see more of, maybe some more quarterback keep in the red zone, or at least have that threat or that option, or maybe you have just a quarterback zone read keep just to mess with the defense from time to time? Do you think that's part of the playbook for Dana?
I think it could be. You lose Dante Dowdell, who was your red zone power back, and maybe somebody else emerges in that way. And if not, like, that's kind of the next logical area that you look at is a QB sneak or something like that. I view quarterback runs sort of like a changeup in baseball. Sure. Like, you got to pick your spots with that. If your opponent, you don't want your opponent to know it's coming. You want them to be gearing up for the fastball or the pass. And I think those changeups can be well placed. Like, to me, that's the biggest back-breaking play a defense can give up. Like, that's the kind of play that just kind of takes the heart out of a defense. You give up a deep pass or whatever, you tip your hat. But like, it's those plays where you've got everybody covered and you're forcing the quarterback to make a play, and then they just run for it. That just kills you. So, like, Nebraska had a couple of those moments last year. I think of the Ohio State game when Raiola showed that a little bit. He's still learning kind of when to slide and how to slide and what that looks like. Probably could have avoided a couple heated moments in that Boston College game there at the end if he was sliding a little earlier. But I still think it's a better place for Nebraska than the other extreme, when for so many years it was too reliant on the quarterback run game, and there were injuries that came from that. And like, I think if you're Nebraska's had so many quarterbacks that were fleet of foot that they had to teach how to pass and how to be better throwing the ball. And I think it's easier and more natural to go the other way, where they've got a kid with a great arm who's already now had a tour of the Big Ten and defenses and how you handle that. I think it's a lot easier to incorporate a little bit of the run and maybe have a play or two, a game where that's designed. I know he had a couple moments late in the season, Raiola did, when he made that call on his own. He pulled the ball because he saw something with the defense and went with it. So I think it's a change-up that he probably needs to add to his repertoire, but we've seen certainly Nebraska be too reliant on that in the past too. So I think you just got to pick your spots, and like we just saw college football at the highest level, those quarterbacks are able to do that, and I'm sure that's something Raiola and Dana Holgorsen will look at.
I tell you what, if they can make Raiola more fleet of foot, if they can make him more athletic from that quarterbacking spot, I think there's potential. You can make a lot of money with that workout plan, because I've been trying to teach myself how to dunk for going on 10 years now.
Keep trying.
Never gained the necessary athleticism, but if they can do it with Raiola in one offseason, turn him into a better athlete, sell that, put it back into the NIL fund, could be an idea there.
I mean, I don't know if he's doing P90X or whatever from back in the day, but yeah, I mean, there's a fine line, right? Like, you want to be slim enough to be able to make that play, but you also got to have as much muscle as you need to absorb the hits and the blows that come with a full season too. So it seems like another off season of strength and conditioning will do him well. And if you can add a little bit of explosiveness in the weight room and let Corey Campbell and those guys do their things, that's probably good too.
Yeah. Right now, Evan, it's Ozempic this, semaglutide that. What happened to P90X? You're right. That's a name I hadn't heard in a long time.
Did you ever hear the story of Bo rocking P90X to get in shape before the season?
No.
Oh, apparently he was just sweating away, rocking P90X or something. Searle said this once upon a time, and pop in his office, and there's Bo wailing away. He used to run on the path, kind of over by South Point. You'd see Bo Cephas sprinting away. That was his thing, to go on the old run. But yeah, I never. I think we had Solo Flex or the DP weight set, Evan and Elijah, back in the day at the Schmidt household. That was a 1-800 purchase by the late, great Joe Papa. And, yeah, let's just say it gathered dust, man. Had a Spud McKenzie poster up next to it, and it just gathered dust.
I think I still have some. I got P90X as a Christmas gift when I was in college. I think I tried it for a week, and probably the same thing. It's still, somewhere under some mothballs at this point.
Was it a gift you asked for, or was it a hint?
No, I actually did ask for it, and then I gave up on it. So there may be a relation there between why I wasn't a college athlete, but I did give it a try for a short time.
I love it. Evan, let's talk a little Husker baseball. Things get rocking Friday, and you have some of the national pundits really praising this team's ceiling. You got some preseason projections. You got a new world, too, with some other teams that'll help the Big Ten. And then you've got a really exciting but challenging early season schedule. What's Coach Bolt have coming into this season? What do you think?
I think they're going to be really good. I mean, they just, they have the qualities that you want in terms of offensively. They're experienced and versatile. I mean, they bring back almost their full lineup from last year, absent Josh Caron at catcher. And then, pitching-wise, you lose Brett Sears, who was the Big Ten Pitcher of the Year, but I think Mason McConaughey is on the short list for a similar honor this year. And there's just a lot of depth that pitching group has, and I don't think you can overstate the impact of Rob Childress being back for his second year in that role as pitching coach. And like I've been doing research on Big Ten teams, and almost universally the big question is, what are they going to do for pitching? And teams brought in a bunch of transfers or are hoping younger guys can take a step. Nebraska has the luxury of being able to point at 5, 6, 7 guys who pitched well in big games for them before. You have some younger players that are in the mix that are going to push them as well. So I just think they're in a really favorable position where you have a pretty big core of accomplished players back, and they've added to that with transfers and guys who had really big summers and falls that are going to push those guys. So you've got talent, and I think the talent behind them to where complacency probably won't be an issue either.
How do you feel about the pitching staff, Evan, being able to go and replace Brett Sears? There's a couple guys at the end of last year that really kind of came into their own. You look at McConaughey being, I think, the prime example, along with Christo, of being guys that, as last year went on, really showed some improvement. How much did guys improve this offseason, and how do they go out and replace your number one guy in Brett Sears?
Yeah, I think it starts with McConaughey. And he was a guy who a year ago at this time was a new JUCO ad who didn't really have a role, and he did well in the midweek and took it over. And so I think you start with him. To me, one of the really intriguing pieces will be Ty Horn, who's a sophomore now. He took some licks as a freshman, but he was extremely well regarded out of high school, had a great summer and fall. That's a guy I think they would love to see take that Saturday role and run with it. And then you have a couple older guys maybe I think in contention for that other spot on Sunday. Jackson Brockett, who of course had the no-hitter last year and really came on strong late. And you've got Will Walsh, who's a two-way guy up until this past offseason. He's a full-time pitcher now. He's added some velocity, a few miles per hour to his offerings. And so I think those are the guys that you probably are looking at least early on in the rotation. And then you have guys that you mentioned, the Drew Christos or Jalen Worthley's, Tucker Timmermans, TJ Coates, who's a new junior college addition, guys like that. Who I think embrace the idea of pitching multiple times on a weekend or potentially could be midweek guys as well. So I think there's a lot of depth there, and really you almost look at each guy individually. They have improved under Childress in the last year too. So it'll be really interesting to see how those roles shake out here the first few weekends in February, but they clearly have options and have a pretty good sense of what they have.
Evan, I just remember watching Horn go in and have a good inning, a good outing, and it wasn't a good finish for Nebraska against Florida, but I loved his competitiveness against that Florida lineup, and I kind of circled his mentality. I mean, he came in flame-throwing, and he's a guy I'm really excited to see grow. I mean, he could be big time, couldn't he?
Yeah, he could. I mean, he was a guy that was sought after in high school out of Kansas, had great high school numbers. A lot of schools were after him. He wanted to pitch for Childress and work under him. And he had some moments last year. He was, I think, he was ridiculously unlucky in terms of unearned runs. I think he was victimized last year far more than anybody else on the staff. But he went out, had a great summer in California, and then came out and really shoved in the fall, had a great red-white. And so I think it's just, he's got multiple offerings, mid-90s velocity, always had kind of that mentality as an alpha. And so if he can, again, slide into that Saturday spot, I mean, Nebraska has a heck of a 1-2 punch to start things off, and it really, I think, opens up opportunities then for other guys either to fill Sunday or Nebraska to finally, for the first time in a while, have an established midweek starter as well.
That's big. Evan Bland with us, Husker Baseball man. Of course, talking some Big Red football at Evan Bland, OWH. Pick 6 podcast. Catch him and his mates wherever you download as well. Evan, we'll do this again. Good to spend some time. Thank you much.
Thanks, guys. See you.
All right, there he is, Evan Bland with us. You're on Hail Varsity. Jake Muhleisen. We'll check in with Big Jake next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity. Get ready for Nebraska and USC. Part of the Husker broadcast. Husker standout and Southeast alum Jake Muhleisen with us at Jake Mule. He's on the call. He's always on the call. Jake, good to spend a few minutes with you. How are you doing?
Yeah, appreciate you having me on. I'm doing pretty good. It's tropical today. It's going to hit 35 degrees, so I'm feeling better.
how about that old plus 45 or even 55
right?
difference from one day to another? At the end of the season, we are going to try and coerce out of you Jake Muhlheisen's all punchable Big Ten list. How would that be? Could you go there with us?
I will go there with you. I won't do that right now. We'll wait for the season end. But I've got a list. I've got most punchable teams. I've got most punchable guys. So I have a list going for you.
No. You know what? There'll probably be some crossover. I like it. I love it.
There will definitely be crossover.
Well, how we feeling? First and foremost, you've been on the road. You've been at home with Nebraska basketball. Have had some really nice wins, but right now a skid's going. And talk to me a little bit here about just the mentality here that you're seeing from the guys.
Yeah, I mean, obviously 4-game losing streak. The confidence has been shattered a little bit, but I know you guys talk to a lot of different folks about the season. I do as well. I come to work and talk about it, but we could have won. Obviously, the Iowa game, the Rutgers game, and the Maryland game. All three of those could have gone our way. So instead of being 2-5 in league, we're 5-2. We have the same team. So I don't think that Husker Nation, Husker fans, even myself, should lose confidence that quickly, because we could have won all three of those games by 1, and we feel a lot better than what we do today, even though we win by 1 instead of lose by 3. So that's how college basketball goes, and I still feel confident in this bunch. We just need to get a win in the worst way, just to get things back on track and not let things get out of control, because obviously 2-5 in league, you're kind of behind the 8 ball a little bit coming home, and obviously a big game tonight. So we just got to get back on track and get some confidence going again.
Jake, I think one of the things that has concerned me, I think it's concerned some Husker fans too, and kind of gives them pause whenever you look at this next stretch coming up, how tough it's going to be, is that comment from Coach Hoiberg last week about toughness, saying he didn't think his team was tough enough. I want to get your thoughts. A guy who's been there and done that, been a college basketball player, what message is that sending to the team, and how have you seen the team respond whenever Coach Hoiberg gets up there after a game and says, well, I didn't think we were tough tonight?
I think that, you guys know how Fred works, and he's very selective on what he says and how he says them. So I think that was something that he said to get back to his team, motivate the guys. And he mentioned in that same comment that I thought the guys had really good effort, but good effort doesn't always mean playing tough. So I think there's a way to play with both great effort and with toughness. And toughness isn't just only you go to the physical side of it when you think of a tough guy, but that's the mental side is too. And it's making hard cuts. It's setting good screens. It's doing the little things. Even just making a good pass. So being tough for 40 minutes and giving effort, and that's what this team has to do, because, the truth is we're just not talented enough offensively for us to roll the ball out there and not play tough and give good effort, especially on the defensive end. So I think that was the message that he was telling his guys, and you saw that the tough side mentally, where we're down 9 with 3.5 to play on the road at College Park, and we battle back and tie it up with a minute to play. So those are the tough plays and tough mental side you have to make, especially on the road. And he was just sending a message to challenge his team, and I think we responded well at Maryland. Now we obviously didn't get it done. Now you have to come back home and hopefully get a win tonight.
Jake Muhlheisen's with us, Hail Varsity Radio, Nebraska, USC, PBA tonight, 8 o'clock. I'm interested to get your take on this veteran team, because Fred's compiled through the portal skilled guys, but he's been selective here the last handful of years with who he brings in, because fit has been paramount with what he wants. As you have an older team, what have you seen from a resilience standpoint with this team getting challenged verbally and and on the practice court by Fred? Do you have the core group of guys here to pull out of this?
I do. I think that, and just being with them on the road the last 2 weekends, obviously the Purdue game didn't go well, but just being with them, seeing how they were in College Park in Maryland, just being at team dinners, and these guys like each other, and they want to win and win the right way. They're not. I don't see any of these guys being selfish, and I think that's why I like, I know we're on a 4-game losing streak, but I still like this team a lot. I still think we've got a ton of games left to get this season back on the right track. But I think in watching them in practices and in shoot-arounds and then in games, I think they're going to respond really well tonight. I think they're going to come together because, as you mentioned to me, I mean, these guys have played a lot of college ball, and they came here for a reason. They came here to win that first elusive NCAA tournament game, and Jawan Gary and Bryce Williams came back for that, and they're going out and playing the right way, playing together. So I think these guys have the right makeup. I think Coach Hoiberg has recruited the right guys as far as character, and they're talented. So I think this team still has a lot of potential, and 13 games left in Big Ten play, and a lot of games left on the horizon.
Jake, it's felt like the past 3 seasons, Fred Hoiberg's squad, the team hasn't quite hit their stride. Maybe that's not the right way to put it, but they didn't play their best basketball until February. And a lot of teams can say that around the country, but it really feels like this team plays at a better rate in the month of February than they do in other months. I think that it's a credit to Fred, how he gets the team better throughout the year. I want to get your thoughts as we're a week and change away from February. What are the things that need to be better by February for that trend to continue this year?
Well, let's hope that holds true for this year, too. You're right, where Fred's teams seem to get better and better as the season progresses, and that's what you want. And I think the main thing that we have to clean up offensively is turnovers. You've seen the turnovers the last handful of games kind of plague us, especially in the first half. You saw that at Maryland. We had 9 turnovers in the first half. We have to value possessions, and then defensively, we have to get back to having that mentality of running guys off the 3-point line, playing that physical basketball, turning the other team over, and turning some defense and offense. We just haven't done that at a consistent enough rate. We've gone on too many possessions, whether we're in helter-skelter, not communicating defensively, not getting matched up, and they're getting some wide-open looks from 3, or offensively, we turn over too much and we go on some droughts. So I think those are the main things we got to clean up. But I wouldn't be surprised, too, tonight that he may tinker with the lineup. You saw that Braxton Mia didn't play at all the second half in Maryland, so you may have a different starting 5 tonight. I'm not sure if that's Andrew Morgan coming in or Connor Seaton, but I think you might see that bench get a little bit shorter going into February, just to try to get the momentum back in our favor and have a really good February like we had the last 2 seasons.
Jake Muhleisen's with us, Hail Varsity Radio, Nebraska, USC, Husker Hoops. Jake, Captain Morgan, as we call him, played great on the road at Maryland. Wonderful spark offensively. I thought Ulis, with his assists and just headiness, he really did a good job. It was pretty graceful, quite honestly, getting to the rim or making cuts to the basket. Both those guys have stayed ready. Touch on that part of the maturity. Can they take off? Was Maryland maybe a starting point for maybe a great finish for both of them?
I think it can be, and you're right. I mean, those guys, Hughes Morgan, with his first half there, well, he was just huge off the bench, was scoring, and he was starting to demand a lot of attention defensively. And then you have Ulis come in and played, the most action that he's had all season long. He's only averaging about 15 minutes a game this season. So he played 25 or 30 that game and played fantastic, career-high 10 assists. I know he had that last turnover in the final 30 seconds, but he played really good off the bench. And he can be that change of speed guy where it just adds a little different element than what Raleigh does when Aaron has the ball, getting to the rim, making plays for teammates. I wish he could just shoot it a little better, but the plays that he made in that Maryland game on both sides of the floor were so big. But I think that game could really be a catapult for those 2 guys for these remaining 13 Big Ten games.
Jake, when you look at the upcoming stretch, Wisconsin on the road, Illinois at home, Oregon on the road, Washington on the road, how important does that make tonight? Must win is what keeps running through my mind with this USC game. I want to get your thoughts just on how important it is for Nebraska to put that losing streak aside with the stretch coming up.
It's huge. I mean, it's hard to to say the ninth Big Ten game, on January 22nd, is a must-win. If it's not a must-win, it's about as close as you can to getting one at this juncture of the season, because it's huge. You go to number 18 Wisconsin this weekend. You got Illinois at home, who has played really well on the road, had a big win at Oregon a few weeks back, and then we travel and do the long road trip on the West Coast at Oregon, at Washington. So it's a big game here. And obviously USC, they had the big road one at Illinois, won by 5 a few weeks back. So they are playing much better than what they did earlier this season. So it is a huge game. So I hope Husker fans have not given up faith in this team, and they're going to fill PBA. Hopefully they're down at the rail yard right now getting hydrated.
They might be. Jake Muhleisen with us. Lastly, Jake, we'll get you out real quick. Where's Nebraska's advantage tonight?
I think that we're a much better defensive team. And even, I think USC has a ton of talent. I do think they're a really talented team. I just don't think they're very disciplined on both ends of the floor. I think they can take some wild shots, and they don't want to play the long, disciplined defensive possessions. They want to get the ball, get out and run, and push the tempo. So I think we're a much more disciplined team. I think we're a more skilled team offensively, a little bit better shooting team than we are. So I think we can turn USC over, but we just cannot let them get any rhythm offensively, because as you saw at that Illinois game, they started to feel really good offensively, scored 82 in that game, and they have some guys that if they feel that confidence and get some swagger early, they can be really dangerous offensively. But I think we're just a more skilled, disciplined, tougher team than them, and we really have to let them know that we're the more physical team those first 5 minutes.
Jake, have a great call. Thanks for a few minutes.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on, and hopefully we're talking after a win tonight.
Hydrating and rail yard, yes, please. Here, Kent and Jake, of course, AM 590, your home for Husker basketball. They'll get rocking right around 7.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Hail Varsity continues. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday. Dr. Brandon Seifert.
We'll check ourselves before we wreck ourselves here with Dr. Brandon, right?
Thank you. Yeah, because I know in Dr. Brandon's playlist there is a whole boatload of Ice Cube. Dr. Brandon, am I right? You Ice Cube, and you've got the Predator album on repeat like I do?
He's into Ice Cube along with Compression, Elevation, and Rest.
Yes. Nice. See?
That's priceless.
We did there.
That's priceless.
You and I, Dr. Brandon, had to smuggle the old parental advisory past the folks. Let us not lie, right?
There it is.
What are you listening to, son? The Doors. Pee in this cup.
It's similar.
Yeah. We us mid-40-year-olds, I get it. Dr. Brandon, good to have you in. The old pig suey is squealing here a little bit with stud guard Mr. Fland here, and Boogie is his first name. Boogie ain't getting down. He is out tonight against Georgia. Tried to go the last couple of games and sounds to be season ending here. And this guy's a projected draft pick here for the NBA. Dr. Brandon didn't really get specific with it, but Fland been dealing with this hand injury since January 11th.
Yeah, absolutely. So, terrific player. It sounds like he's tried to push through it. Mm-hmm. You are right, though. They're not being super specific in terms of what this is. So we'll do a little bit of some speculation here to try to figure out exactly what he has going on, especially in the sense of ending his season for him with, still another good 2 months essentially left of season, at least, 6 weeks. But essentially, as you start to speculate on that, it sounds like this was in a game at home, I think against Florida, I think their coach had said, and maybe somebody had stepped on the hand. So probably something more along the lines of, you'd think first like a metacarpal fracture. So anatomically in the hand, the long bones that come off the back of the fingers and kind of attach at the wrist, those are called your metacarpals. Pretty common sports injury that we see. Usually with those, though, you can immobilize for a couple of weeks and then get them back. And so be a little bit speculation to think that that's what it is that's knocking him out for the season, unless he has one they've been nursing along and is starting to displace, maybe getting a rotational deformity, and they're maybe talking about surgery, although they didn't mention that. So that would be one scenario where a metacarpal fracture perhaps might sideline him for a duration of time. More seriously, though, if you move further back into the wrist, so the small bones that make up the wrist joint, and in particular coming off the base of the thumb, there's a bone there called a scaphoid, and that's a bone that does not have great blood supply and could be an issue for him. And maybe he had a non-displaced crack in that area. It's just not healing, and you have to be really careful with those. And so that might be the scenario we're dealing with here, is they may have one of those that have been trying to treat non-op and then may not be healing well. Now they're just going to fold up shop and either fix it or just totally immobilize him and shut him down for the year.
And with Boogie Fland, his NBA draft potential at the end of this year, I know ESPN has him as a top 30 prospect in this year's upcoming draft, the potential for a one and done. Want to get your thoughts on just the risk for re-injury in that hand should he try to make a return. Let's say he sits out for a month and then you get to March and he says, you know what, this Razorbacks team, they might make a run at the tourney. I'll be back in time for conference title. I mean, how much do you worry with a hand injury in the sport of basketball about re-injury, about a guy potentially sinking his draft stock because he tried to come back too soon from an injury like this?
Yeah, it's a great question. So obviously we're in kind of the speculation phase here in terms of what this injury is. And so there are some of these that you can be really aggressive with. So, for example, if it is like one of the metacarpal injuries, those are those small bones that come off the back of the fingers. If it is one of those, you can be really aggressive with it and give us a few weeks, and then maybe you do try to get him back for conference and for the NCAA tournament. So that'd be a possibility, and that'd be the best-case scenario, and really pretty limited kind of long-term deficits related to that. He should get back and do well. Where you start to worry more about these would be, kind of those three scenarios of either A, is it like a scaphoid fracture? B, is it maybe the ligament that attaches the scaphoid to the lunate? They're right next to one another. That's an important ligament structure, and that would be really worrisome if it's that. And then the other one you worry about would be there's a big ligament structure on the outside of your wrist. You kind of feel where the bump is on the outside of your wrist. That's called the ulnar styloid. There's a really thick ligamentous structure there called your triangular fibrocartilage complex, TFCC, that we will see injured sometimes in basketball and other sports in particular. And that can be a bigger issue where that could be a draft stock issue for him if you don't, address that appropriately. And so kind of tough to decide, which one of these it is. Again, the fact that they're talking, losing the season makes you worried that it might be one of those, worst scenarios, which are those three things that I'd mentioned.
Well, Arkansas is off to an 0-5 start in conference play, and Coach Cal's hearing some screams from the Arkansas faithful. When you look at Boogie, though, Dr. Brandon, how bad of a fall? And I'm just picturing a guy going to the 10 and gets taken out, and you put your hands out when you're trying to land, right? And here comes your scaphoid fracture, like you're talking about. Do you have to, a lot of times, if surgery is the alternative or option versus just a cast, do you have to always do pins there? Tell me a little bit here about how invasive it can be.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, talking specifically about the scaphoid. Again, that's the small wrist bone that comes off the base of the thumb. The reason that you hear a lot about it, and it's problematic, is the blood supply to that is not great. In particular, the blood supply to that bone comes in what we call retrograde, so it comes around the bone and then comes in from the end of the bone and flows backwards. And so with that, if you break at a certain point, that tip of that's more closer to the wrist as opposed to the fingers, we call that the proximal portion, you're going to really disrupt that blood supply. So those, even with fixation, you still worry about it, they're not going to heal. Any scaphoid fracture that basically has any kind of displacement to it, you want to fix that with the screw. Where the debate comes in is the scaphoid injuries that don't have displacement. You can see the crack there. Do you put a screw in it and fix it, or do you not? And there's kind of some debate about that in orthopedics. Which route do you take? And so in your young athletes, you're probably more apt to be aggressive and fix that, so you don't have to worry about the long-term complications, which if these don't heal, that can be a significant problem and a difficult problem to fix later.
It's Dr. Brandon Seifert with us here at Jock Doc Wednesday. And Dr. Brandon, about 60 seconds here before we get out. We've used a lot of big words and a lot of speculation today with this injury, so I just want to step back and go big picture for a second. If you're, say, an NBA team, let's say you're Boogie's agent, Is there enough with an injury to the hand that you would be concerned about just his long-term future playing basketball? For the most part, do you see guys come back pretty well from hand injuries?
Should come back really well. Again, there's a few of those highlights out there that can be an issue. Vast majority of the time, though, it's a fixable, solvable problem that does well and has a good long-term prognosis, and I would assume that would be the case for him.
Dr. Brandon will do this again and do another Jock Doc next Wednesday. And appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us here today.
Okay, fellas. You guys take care.
There he is. Dr. Brandon Seifert's going to go listen to some Ice Cube now. Well played, Elijah. We've got to get a steak and a beer bet going.
Do we, for Husker basketball?
Yes.
Do we have to?
Well, maybe we'll pick a second game. But we'll call our shot with Nebraska and USC tonight. You're going down.
Yeah, I don't
Elijah will be on media. Will be on Media Row when Nebraska starts the PBA win streak all over again. It will be because of Elijah Herbel.
Yeah, anyone going to the game?
I was there for Rutgers.
Pick the odd man out on Media Road.
All right, we'll wind it down and get some more comments in the stream. It's Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Hail Varsity with you. Reminder to take us with podcast us, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. And we thank you so much for all the downloads, man. It's awesome. And search Hail Varsity Radio. If you're new to the show and get subscribed, doesn't cost you anything. Check us out on those platforms. Hail Varsity YouTube is where you can go to watch the show and on demand. Real easy to do that. And can watch on Hail Varsity Radio Twitter as well at HVarsity Radio. Give Elijah a follow at Muhleisen at Schmidt_radio for me, Chris Schmidt. And reminder to get buckled up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives. It prevents injury. Only if properly worn. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. We'll have our Husker Hoops predictions here. And I'm going to scan the old Big Ten tonight and see who's also in action. Good night of ball yesterday as you had Oregon survive Washington. Purdue got stung at home by Ohio State. UCLA 85-83 over Wisconsin. And then Minnesota, they won at Iowa. So there is that. There is no off night in Big Ten basketball. Just ask Purdue. Indiana's at Northwestern. Kind of want to see Northwestern win this so Dan Dockich can crucify the Hoosiers again. I mean, that's a simple joy I have is 3-2-1 explosion. Dan Dockich kills Indiana basketball. Pretty funny. Line right now 6.5. I think you'll probably see Ulis in the starting lineup tonight. More Captain Morgan, as we call him. And I know there's plenty of captain being crushed in the rail yard right now as you hopefully find your way down there to then find your way to PBA. Nebraska 6.5. I think they get it done. And I think they sweat this one out as well. St. Thomas playing great basketball. He's coming in on a heater. Awesome talent. Loved covering him in high school during the state tournament. And give me Nebraska 74, USC 65. Nebraska wins and covers.
It should be noted, Schmitty. This coming in within the last 15 minutes. The availability report, Andrew Morgan listed as questionable. Does that change your forecast?
Yes, it does. It changes the cover. If Morgan, who may have gotten dinged up a little bit post-Maryland, we'll see how much practice he's had. Hopefully he can go if you're a Nebraska fan because he's been a great heartbeat. He's been great in the paint. He's been good down low.
Questionable makes me think he's not going to be a go.
Yeah.
If you got questions this close to tip-off. Well, Vegas sees this as like a 75-69 win for Nebraska.
No, that's what Rutgers was supposed to be as well. They got to show some heart. It's the home. I'm going to say Nebraska wins, SC covers. How's that? 74-70? Fair enough?
Okay.
74-70.
In that case, I'll take the win and cover for the Huskers.
Okay. All right. Is that our steak and a beer?
Sure. Give me Nebraska 77 and USC 69.
Does the ghost of Harold Miner erupt for 42?
Well, what Nebraska needs tonight is they need Bryce Williams to play like the dude.
Well, here's the thing. you're good. You can score. You're fantastic at finding your spot and taking a smart shot. Do you want to be a killer? When it comes to winning time, do you want the ball in your hand to go end somebody's night?
This team needs him to be that because they don't have a true number 2 scorer.
No. Yeah. All right, back at you tomorrow at 4. Coach Barnett with us. Brandon Vogel also checks in.